He fell down on the floor, badly bleeding, and the mirror of his helmet tore into pieces. A helmet person sits on him and tries to punch his face, but he moves his face here and there to save his punch. Afterward, the helmet man closed his hand, prepared a heavy punch, and hit his face hard. Then his strong helmet tore to pieces and his face was injured badly. Some people who are standing there for the red helmet man start hooting for him, but those who are standing there for the opponent become sad to see him injured. The teacher looks at Sebastian and says to him maybe he likes it. Sebastian looks at his teacher joyfully and says to him that he is doing something this fun without him. The battle starts once again. Sebastian looks at them carefully and remembers something. People raise their hands with money and bet with each other. Some people will pay 50,000 yuan if the red helmet wins, and some people will also pay if the black helmet guy wins. Meanwhile, the red helmet punches the opponent, and the supporters of him become happy to see this. Suddenly, Sebastian remembers his previous days when he also attended this type of fight. At that time, people also bet with each other, and people started to dance by closing their eyes because of winning the bet. Sebastian, as a child, also saw the current situation and wondered why people were flying money in the air. During this scene on the battlefield, someone put his hand on the head of his head. He looked towards him. That was a guy with rounded, shiny eyes who also enjoyed the fight, and he advised him to engrave this scene into his eyes where everyone loves money. That person was Sebastian's father, who told him that this was the power supporting the assassin clan. Sebastian looked at his father, smiled, and made sure that he would obey his advice. That's why, look at them all, Sebastian remembers his previous memories. Remembering that, Sebastian feels that his teacher is calling his name. The teacher asks him, by fixing his glasses, if he remembers it too. Sebastian puts one hand on the iron stand and the other hand on his face and replies that he's listening to everything. The teacher tells Sebastian that it is the reenactment of the battle arena the former assassin clan leader conducted, and he would have liked it if he were here to see this. Moreover, the teacher looks at the fight downward, puts his hand on his chin, and says that his whereabouts are unknown right now, and he is trying to find him. After hearing him carefully, Sebastian put his hand on his devil pendant and suddenly took a high jump to land on the battlefield. Both fighters become surprised to see him go towards them, and finally, Sebastian lands on the battlefield. Sebastian's teacher, his employee, and other people are surprised to see him there. Sebastian looks at the people arrogantly and tells them about himself. He is the vice clan leader of the assassin clan, Sebastian. People start to say that rematch, and some say that make the bets again. A helmet guy attacks him from the backside, but Sebastian punches his face hard. That guy fell on the floor, his helmet broke, and blood came out from his nose. Then Sebastian put his shoe on his face and asked the people, those who had complaints, to come up here and fight with him. But people do not reply to him and look at him frightenedly. Sebastian asks the people arrogantly that no one is here to fight with him, but no one replies. By pressing his face hard, Sebastian arrogantly asks the people if nobody wants to fight him, but no one replies. Then he lifts his shoe up, hardly puts it on his face, and kills him. People became angrier and more frightened to see this incident. Sebastian smiles and thinks he has put his fear in people's minds, so this is a good time to convey his message. Surprisingly, people talk with each other, and he says that he is in the assassin clan. Does he mean the one who wants them to distribute the PEM? Such an influential figure of the underworld should not come here? After coughing, the teacher smiles and says to him that he still has such a great temper. Sebastian raises his hand and orders them to listen up. The reason why he is giving them the ancient moon squad, the PEM, is because their actions are righteous. People look at him frightenedly and think about his talks. He remembers their previous records either belong to the robbery, disturb the people with their wheels, or beat the police. Moreover, he explains that what they are doing is not wrong. The way they are acting according to their instincts is proof that the PEM is allowing them all to grow. As the teenagers form a group, they collectively perform rubbering, the expensive thing, by using PEM, which is not bad. Some people are rubbering, and Sebastian closes his hand and says to them that they must spread the PEM even more across civilization. Awaken repressed instincts help awaken in the ordinary folk the instinct they are all feeling. Everyone is listening to him carefully that the moment they awaken the power lying dormant within them, the justice of this world will change. The era of power and desire the demonic spirit had brought upon them. Sebastian points towards people with his finger and says that they all shall bring it back once more. Then he quit, silence spread everywhere, and he thought that maybe people did not like his conversation. But suddenly, everyone raised their hands happily and said that he was the best person and he taught them well. Red Helmet Man also hears this all, standing aside quietly and then looking at him angrily. On the other side, someone kicks the other one, and the other guy shows him his hand, calls him to fight with him, and attacks him. This is the Kang who tries to kick the face of the masked man multiple times, but he moves his hands and saves himself. Kang is surprised to see that he is such a professional person. He easily blocks such a level of consecutive attacks. Suddenly, Kang attacks his face 2 more times, but he sits on the floor and saves himself by rotating. Kang suddenly falls to the floor. The masked man tries to kick his chest, but Kang jumps in the other direction and is saved by his hit. When Kang sits on the floor, he looks at him angrily and thinks that he is not even giving him a chance to breathe, and he has to regain his posture quickly. Meanwhile, the masked man comes near to him and suddenly attacks his face, but he uses his arm on his face as a shield and saves it with his punch. Putting his arm on his face, Kang thinks that he must want to settle this with a swift offense. Meanwhile, the masked man attacks him again, but Kang hits his attack with his leg, saying that he attacks him so fast that it seems that he is in a hurry. The masked man does not reply to him, but attacks his chin with his knee again. Meanwhile, Kang grabs his knee aggressively and falls on the floor. By grabbing his knee, Kang tries to punch his face angrily and says, "Let's try his precious face." But the masked man bows him down and saves himself by his punch. Then, the masked man rotated himself and applied a kick to Kang's face. Blood comes out from his mouth. He falls against the wall hard and thinks that he is careless. The masked man also puts his hand on his face, and it seems that he gets tired. Then he looks at him angrily and comes out something from his pants pocket. This is a sharp pocket knife. The masked man moves it in a circular motion to show him. Then he looks at Kang angrily, grabs the knife in his hand tightly, and moves toward him to attack him. He shows his sharp knife to Kang and says to him, "Get ready to kill." Kang is not able to get up because he is injured badly and looks at him angrily. The masked man comes near to him to attack him, but suddenly, he hears the voice of someone passing by them. That's why he rotated the pocket knife by its circular handle and put it inside his pocket immediately. Then, suddenly, the masked man takes a high jump toward the stairs and runs away. By putting their hand on his neck, Kang shouts at him aggressively, asking why he is going, but he thinks that it seems that he is afraid of him, and that he is good at Qinggong martial arts. He tries to jump upwards, but his legs cannot move because his face seems aggressive. Then he looks at his legs and thinks that he is practicing Qinggong nowadays, which is why his legs are not able to move right now. While thinking about this all, Kang feels the presence of someone there and looks over there surprisingly. There is a guy who uses the pen, becomes conscious, and orders Kang aggressively that he idiot quickly calls 119. Then he looks at Kang angrily and shouts at him, why the hell is he staring so idiotically, and says that calling 119 should be the first thing he does when he sees that someone has collapsed. Kang looks at him surprisingly and regrets that he was wrong and was thinking him an idiot thug. On the other hand, on Moony nights in the commercial area, some people fight with each other. The martial police leader orders their companions not to lose focus and not to let a single one escape. Then Bo-Ah, fighting near him, says okay. Then the group leader fights their head and attacks him, but he saves himself with his sword. Then the fighter attacks the leader 2 times on his arm and leg, but the leader flips and saves himself actively. Then he again hit the leg of the leader and fell him. Then he dropped him there and started to run away by taking a cigarette in his mouth. The leader feels pain in his body and is not able to stand up again. That's why he orders his other companions that he is skilled in anticipating his opponent's movements. He is taking actions that are focused on escape. He is definitely an executive and says someone hurries and holds him. Meanwhile, he gathered his power and started to stand up to chase him with his sword by saying that he had to catch him because everyone was busy in a fight. A pink-haired girl reaches the top of that building with his sword and jumps off from that building. She exactly jumps off on the head of that fighter. The fighter smiles and no one grabs him because he is the best at Qinggong of their organization. Meanwhile, the girl, Jiho, stops him with the attack of her legs by going outside and flipping it in a circular position. The fighter falls away on the floor hard, feels pain in his body, and his cigarette also comes out from his mouth. She penetrates her sword into his throat and tells him arrogantly that no one can escape the attack of martial police. The leader comes towards her, cleans his face, and says that she did a good job as expected, thanks. Jiho smiles and says that it is her job to save his companions. Martial police and other police officers discuss investigations with each other. The leader is watching his mobile because of an incoming call. He calls her, and then Jiho turns her face aside to look at him. Then, the leader gives her his mobile by saying that Sungwoo Hyun told him to put her on, take it, and talk with him. She greets on the call to Sungwoo Hyun, saying, "Is you Jiho?" Then he says to her, "Return to Murim Police University right now." He orders her in front of Jenin that he still has duties for her, to leave them to another team, and to come here quickly. This is important. On the other hand, near the downstairs area, by putting a piece of wood in his mouth, Kang asks the other three guys if the drug that the masked man stole from them is called PEM. These three guys raise their hands by closing their hands. The side friends are looking sad, while in the center, the guy looks angry and their head swells because of his beat. The second guy replies angrily that yes, and he also asked them this question 3 times. Kang again hits on the second guy's head and says that he does not become aggressive in front of him. Then Kang looks at the blue shirt guy and asks him why he is not raising both his arms. He replies that, for God's sake, he is injured. He remembers that maybe his arm was dislocated earlier by the masked man during his attack on him. Then Kang goes towards him and moves his arm to confirm whether he is really injured or not. That guy screamed loudly by opening his mouth because of pain, but Kang fixed it. Then that guy relaxes by moving his arm and says that it does not hurt anymore. Then Kang says arrogantly he was acting like a crybaby. Kang looks at them and thinks that he is such a martial arts master because he only injures them to the extent that they can easily be treated. Then Kang feels better, carries his shopping bags, and goes from there by saying that he is off now. The guys go home well and stop causing trouble and disappointing their parents, but the guy tries to stop him. He replies to him by holding his cap smilingly that it seems like he is the Murim Police University's student this year, and so he fights well. He requested him to teach them to fight because they were also a senior student at this university. After listening to this, Kang throws his shopping bag in his face and says to him angrily shame on him for doing these types of activities. Meanwhile, Kang watches his mobile surprisingly because of the incoming call, and it is the Kaijak on call. He receives the incoming call, and Kaijak shouts loudly on the call. His voice comes out from the call, and he asks him because he is not coming back after a long time. Kang replies to him annoyingly that he is busy, something absolutely unbelievable. Kang is shocked to hear him say that it is not important. Hurry up to come back here because an urgent summons has been made. On the other side, on the boundary of the battlefield, a new helmeted guy fights with the brown-haired person, and everyone enjoys their fight around them. The brown-haired guy tries to punch the helmet guy, but he moves downward and saves himself. Then, the red helmet guy kicks his opponent hard. He becomes angry after powerful hits and prepares his punch to apply to him. But suddenly, his opponent grabs him by his neck and takes a high jump. Then he landed on the floor, slipped fast, and threw away badly. That guy becomes unconscious, and the red helmet guy arrogantly stands over there. Everyone raises their hands to clap for him on his good performance. The red helmet guy feels that someone is talking to him. There is a teacher who asks him, after such a long time, how the entertainment was, and he replies it was good. Then the teacher fixes his glasses and tells him smilingly that the negotiations with the assassin clan have been completed. The red helmet guy takes the helmet off his head and throws it away. It is Mr. Jin from the assassin clan group. He smiles and asks the old man what he said because he does not understand his meaning. Then the old man orders his employees to bring chairs for them. They set the chairs in that place and then sit. Jin's employee put on him his red coat. Then, by taking a water bottle from the employee, he asks the teacher if Sebastian orders the price to be raised for Pem. The teacher replies smilingly that yes, it is truly expected of him, and Sebastian is very similar to the former clan leader. Jin drinks the water from a water bottle and says that, for God's sake, this is the problem with money grubbers, but do as he wishes. After drinking water, Jin cleans his lips arrogantly and says that he can use them to recover them. Meanwhile, Kang feels lazy and unconscious. He is sitting in the class and puts his face on the table, but Jaijak aggressively shouts at him and advises him to listen to the lecture consciously. Jiho, who is standing behind them, says to him roughly that they are not the latecomers being quite talkative. Then they become frightened and conscious after listening to her. Then she grabs them by their necks and orders them secretly not to disturb others, but Jang becomes aggressive to see them. Then, Murim Police Force Foreign Affairs Team Leader Jang Sungwoo, standing on the stage, says that since everyone is here, let's begin the conversation. Sungwoo puts his hand on his chest and says to the students that all of them will be carrying out a special mission together with their team starting tomorrow. The students become surprised to listen to him and think about the special mission. Sungwoo switches on the screen with the remote held in his hand and explains the special mission to the students to allow them to get a better understanding of it. He will give a brief explanation about Pem and the Ancient Moon Squad and orders them to listen carefully. Kang looks to the other side and thinks that he already has little information about Pem. Sungwoo shows them the pictures on the LED screen in which Sungwoo holds a pill pack called Pem, which means an internal energy enhancement drug. Then he shows them another picture of the guys of the Ancient Moon Squad, the troublemakers who have been on the rise recently. They have been doing major harm in various areas using the power they obtain from the recently popular Pem. They do one-wheeling, snap things from the public, and steal different things like jewelry, mobile phones, and other expensive things. The students listen carefully. He tells them it is a sketchy group whose majority of members are juvenile delinquents who have run away from home. Theft, violence, property damage, and so on, all sorts of major and petty crimes are being committed in an unending stream. Kang surprisingly puts his hand on his lips and says that something like that is happening in Murim. Then Sunwoo replies yes. He moves his face downward because of tension and says that if they are left unchecked, then modern society will fall into chaos. Meanwhile, Sungwoo moves his face upward angrily and says to the students that to eliminate the roots of Pem and the Ancient Moon Squad, the current cancers of society, they have to work hard. Jaijok raises his hand and asks him if the police should not be enough to take care of this type of gang and spoilers. Sungwoo replies angrily to remind them that those idiots are taking Pem. As long as they have learned even a little martial arts, they can easily take down a couple of police officers each. Jiho again grabbed Jaijok's neck and asked him annoyingly if he thought they would receive a mission like this if the police could handle it. He orders him to use his head a little before speaking. He replies sorry, but Kang looks at them angrily and says that he was going to ask the same question. Moreover, Sungwoo tells them the Pem problem was already prevalent even before the Ancient Moon Squad was active, and they must find the supplier hidden in the shadows. Kang raises his hand and tells his leader about that drug. He knows some people who have bought it. On the other side, in the police jurisdiction of Murim's interrogation room, a person is imprisoned with heavy chains. A police officer is sitting in front of him for investigation, and the police officer asks to tell him where Pem originated from. Prisoner smilingly replies by putting a straw in his mouth. He thinks he is asking so formally like that who is going to make him talk. Moreover, he says that he should at least guarantee his protection if he wants him to talk. Then he tells a female police detective and says that, as expected, he is not talking about Pem. She replies they should make a proposal to the higher-ups. His lips would not loosen for anything less than something like getting refuge overseas. The officer looks tense and says that if they do that, Commissioner Jang Jinin will hear about it, and the police have a reputation to uphold as well. Suddenly, both feel someone come there and blue laser strings waving in the dark area. The prisoner bows his position down, and the officer becomes frightened to hear the voices of firing. The officer shouts loudly and asks what is going on, but the prisoner in the bow position replies that finally they are here. By wearing sunglasses, he looks at him happily and says that he did not remember to tell him the good thing. The officer looks at him aggressively and thinks that he is sure someone is coming here to release the prisoner. Then, the officer comes out of the room by rotating himself while holding the pistol in his hand. The officer orders by holding the powerful gun that whoever is there comes out this instant, and if he does not, then he will shoot right now. Meanwhile, a girl comes there flying, breaks down the front part of his powerful gun, and he becomes surprised. Then, that pink-haired girl killed that officer with the help of the laser strings and tore him into pieces. She moves towards the prisoner who is sitting on the seat, and his body is tied up with heavy chains. He suddenly looks at that person and smilingly says that to think Director B would come personally to pick him up is an honor for him. He moves forward towards her smilingly and requests her to please untie him quickly. She quickly breaks his chains, and he becomes happy after release. Then she throws in front of him the gun of that officer, which that girl broke down. The girl is B&A, who is coming towards him by holding her powerful laser strings. The prisoner tells her laughingly that he did not tell them a single word about Pem. During the prisoner's laughing, Ina cuts his throat with his powerful laser string and says that she was listening, and that he offered to tell them about Pem if they escaped him. After saying and killing him, Ina comes out her mobile and calls someone. By waving the strings in her hand, Ina says to someone that she finished him. That person is Yiho, who feels relaxed to hear her and tells her that she did good work. Meanwhile, at night, a Mercedes car covers the distance. In the car, a person is sitting in the back seat but putting his shoes on the front seat. He is Sebastian, who asks his employee to have someone run a background check on the Ancient Moon Squad. His employee asked if he had already dug up all there is to know about them, but Sebastian replied he did. Moreover, he said that he had thought he would simply be using some high schoolers to make some pocket change or something. Then Sebastian looks outside the car window and says that there is definitely someone backing them, and it must be some big shot. Sebastian tells his employee that the assassin clan will start manufacturing Pem as well. His employee replies that if he does that, their relationship with the chairman will be damaged. Sebastian closes his eyes and says that of course he has to maintain his relationship with him, and he can give what the chairman makes to the Ancient Moon Squad like they have been doing. Moreover, he says that if they disguise the assassin clan's Pem with the chairman's product, then they will be able to earn twice as much as they are making now. Remembering the skull sign, he says that the capital they earn from that will be the stepping stone to perfecting the assassin clan legion. By putting his hand in his pocket, he says that when that happens, the forefront of the unorthodox sect will not be the Black Unorthodox Alliance, but the assassin clan. Meanwhile, someone calls Sebastian and tells him that something terrible happened over there. Sebastian asks him what is going on. An injured guy saves himself from someone and frightenedly tells Sebastian that test subject 13 has gone berserk. A loud screaming voice scattered there, and someone punched his face hard, killing him, which can be seen from his eye reflection. The blood scatters in the room, his mobile drowning with the blood, falling away on the other side of the floor. Everyone was lying on the floor in blood, and a giant-sized person was standing over them, surrounded in chains. He has two shiny eyes, makes a heavy punch on the room's gate hard, smiles, and goes outside. Someone lifts the breakage mobile from the floor, puts it on her ear, and tells him that it is her. The blonde-haired girl smiles and tells him that the experiment was a success. On the other side, at the Martial Police University, leader Sungwoo says that they will begin the investigations using Kang Tion's information as their foundation tomorrow. All students stand in a queue appropriately. Sungwoo orders them they must always travel in pairs when they are on the move or dismissed. Bo-ah shakes her hand with Jang happily and tells her that he is so much more handsome up close and she will be in his care, but Jang reacts arrogantly. Then, a guy named Park Jitty puts his hand on her and tells her that he thinks they will get along well. She tells her name smilingly, Lee Kaijok, and says that she will be in his care. Now Kang and Jiho stand in front of each other and look arrogant. Then Kang says, frightened that he will be in her care, Jiho Sunbi. Jiho looks at him arrogantly on his face, then she looks at her belly and legs, then again looks at his face. Kang smiles and thinks about why she is looking at him and whether he has done something wrong. Then he looks at him surprisingly and thinks that maybe she is interested in him. Jiho tells him arrogantly to go out with her, but he opens his mouth annoyingly. Kang puts his hand in his pants pocket and says to her nicely that he will protect her from any hurdle. He also makes a scene as a dream that both of them get married and like each other. When thinking about such dreams, Kang makes an unbearable face. Suddenly, Kang feels that someone is calling him. She is Jiho, who asks him if he is sick and what is wrong with him. He replies laughingly that he is just nervous as the special mission begins tomorrow. Kang becomes naughty and thinks that he should take a good look at Lee Kaijok as a person who is incomparably more popular than her. He still looks at both of them together and thinks he will be going ahead first to enjoy campus life thoroughly. After noticing him constantly, Jiho thinks that, no matter how she looks at him, he is a brainless idiot. Jiho thinks that in her previous meeting with the chief, who was sitting on the chair, ordered her to keep an eye on Kang Tion. Jinin puts his hand on his chin and tells her that a special investigation team will be set up within the Murim police force tomorrow. Moreover, he says that groups will be formed to carry out the investigations, and he would like her to make a separate report to him on student Tion. Jiho stands appropriately and asks him if there is some sort of reason for this, and he replies that there is no reason. Jinan looks downward and tells her that he wants to figure him out as he will be one of the leading individuals of the police. Then he angrily looks at her and says that she has no right to ask a lot of questions by the chief and orders her to leave. After thinking about that, Jiho becomes aggressive and thinks about why he is making her do something so pointless and why he is so annoying. Jiho continuously notices Kang that he is smiling and bothering that couple. Then Jiho asks Kang if he is free right now. He stands actively in front of her and replies yes. After listening to his reply, Jiho tells him to come on the roof, and she has to talk about it between just the two of them. Kang becomes angry, but her classmate, looking at him on his backside, says that he was saying that he is not interested in someone. Jiho calls him with her hand gesture. Kang says okay to her with his thumb gesture, but Lee Kaijok looks at both of them angrily. Kang looks towards her by turning his face towards her, teases her by showing her his thumb, and moves forward by giggling. Kaijok curses him and shouts loudly that she does not like to pair with such a guy. Park Jitty comes towards her, punches her head smilingly, and says that he can hear her what she said before. On a moony night on the roof, Jiho is standing near the boundary, feeling the cool breeze and waiting for the Kang. Kang reaches the roof and she says to him finally, he is here after some time. Jiho says to him that she called him up here as there were too many people around them, and it would be troublesome if others overheard. Kang becomes surprised to listen to her and then smiles to think that it means she is finally going to confess. Suddenly, she moved her hand forward. He thought, did people usually hold hands before confessing? That why he put his hand on her hand. Meanwhile, she moves aside his hand and says to him that she is asking for his phone. That's why he puts his hand in his pocket to come out of it. She uses his mobile, standing aside while Kang thinks maybe he is getting her contact number. Then she throws his mobile towards him by saying take it. Kang sees that she saved her number in his phone, and she says to report all of his daily activities to her starting tomorrow. Kang asks her angrily why he has to tell her about his daily activities. Then she replies that by moving downstairs, he has no right to ask for details. He again tells her that his privacy is on the line, so she should at least tell him the reason, and then she hits his nose with a knife. After seeing the knife, he becomes angry. She says that he never knows what might happen during the special mission, so he keeps his phone on. She again looks at him nicely and says to him, he knows what will happen if he does not report to her tomorrow and be a good boy. Kang annoyingly replies to her okay and becomes sad. Meanwhile, Kaijok comes towards Jang, who is already walking, and then she hits the stone aggressively. She makes her face different and asks him if she should file a complaint that she is the only one paired with a male. She waiting for his response, but Jang does not reply to her. Both see that someone is coming towards them. She is a red-haired girl, carrying bad, waving her and saying that the air outside is really nice. Kaijok seems sad after looking at a red-haired girl and thinks that another young-age girl is coming to their university. She is the Ju Nason, belongs to the Black Unorthodox Alliance Master, and looks both standing there. Suddenly, he tries to fall on Jang and says to him that he is so attractive and good-looking, and she starts to like him. Then she asks arrogantly, is he Kang Tion? Then Jang also looks at her surprisingly. Kaijok spreads her arms in front of Kang, says her aggressively to get back, and informs her that he is Jang Hakwoo. After listening to her answer, she moved forward within a second and said sorry, she had come here mistakenly. Both turn back to look at her. Kaijok asks him frightenedly how she can seem to move so fast, but maybe she is a ghost, and he does not reply. While going to the other side, Nason slightly turns back and thinks that she feels the demonic spirit king's energy over there, and Jang also looks at her quietly. On the next day morning, the special investigation day starts, and Kang and Jiho are in a public place. Kang looks at his mobile and asks her if he really has to report every little thing. She says at least tell him a reason to satisfy him. Jiho looks at him nicely, but suddenly Kang says by dancing, "Let hurry and catch those ancient moon squad." Jiho turns her face backside to see them and advises him to wait, but she happily says that he has power in his arm and should begin their investigation. Public people look at them, record the video, and discuss that someone should hurry up and call the police. Suddenly, some people come out of their shops fast, and it seems that they have saved themselves from someone's attack. Kang and Jiho continuously looked at that place, surprisingly. Meanwhile, they see that someone is lying on the going in bad condition, facing his face downward. Kang looks at him and remembers that he had met with him the previous day, who is his senior. That guy is injured badly, pointing towards Kang with his hand and requesting him to save him. After seeing that guy in bad condition, Kang moves towards him, sits near him, and asks what happened to him, who injured him, and how this happened when he skipped school. After seeing this, Jiho becomes surprised, standing near them and thinking about the relationship between Kang and his. But maybe both are friends. Kang points towards him with his finger and replies to her that he met with him recently near the stairs. He is one of the guys he spoke about in the lecture who bought the drug. Meanwhile, both keep quiet because they hear the unusual voices of the bully gang moving towards them. Suddenly, the Ancient Moon Squad gang appeared there on their wheel and tried to hit them, but they jumped and saved themselves. Those guys take high jumps and move themselves in a backward position, and one of them tries to attack the injured guy with his wheel. Meanwhile, Kang jumps and kicks him on his back badly. He falls away badly, and his companions, who are also wearing helmets, become frightened to see his bad end. Kang looks at her arrogantly, asks her what's about his attack, and by showing his hand smilingly, says get ready for his attack. She starts to move on her one wheel and run away, but Kang stands there angrily. He tells her aggressively that he will not let her go this time, but Jiho stops him by pointing towards her hand. Jiho, annoyingly, pointing towards them, asks how he can leave them here like this, and says that when both become conscious, they have to investigate them. But he ran away then. Jiho looked towards the gang guy and injured guy and thought she should call the police. Then Jiho aggressively calls the Murim police force by thinking that she does not want to work with such an idiot guy. On the other hand, the girl who belongs to the Ancient Moon Squad moves towards the construction area near the building. Kang, also running chasing her, stops there to turn and starts chasing her again. Running, he thinks that she is so fast, he also runs fast, and no wonder the police are having a hard time. When Kang reached there, he was shocked to see that two other guys were sitting on the floor in injured condition, and someone was tied up in their arms. Both sitting on the floor by downing their head in bad condition. Kang reaches near them and asks what the hell they guys were done in by the Ancient Moon Squad as well. Then one of them opens his eyes hard. He aggressively shouts at him and tells him to run from here because there are too many gangsters there. Suddenly, Kang hears unusual voices from different people, and then he looks over at the building angrily. There are so many people in the building wearing masks, holding different fight equipment, and looking at him arrogantly. In the other building, the gangsters slowly come near to him by jumping from different floors, holding bats and sticks in their hands. A few moments later, a lot of people gathered around Kang, and he stood there alone. He put his face down, put his in his pants pockets, and said first, this was the police. They were aiming for the Murim police force. Secondly, really, he was wondering what the guys were doing all clustered together like this. Then he faces up and arrogantly says that he will have to give them all a painful lesson on what legitimate institutional power is. In the university's hostel, Jang opens the door of his room, and it looks like someone is standing over there. This is Jinan standing near the window. Then Jinan turned his face slightly and asked why he was not going out because the special investigation should have commenced today. Jinan looks at him to hear his reply, but Jang quietly takes off his upper shirt but does not reply to him. By looking at him, Jinan says that his father's death anniversary is this weekend and maybe he remembers it. He has informed his brother about it as well, so they go attend it together, but by wearing his shirt, he does not reply to him. He wears the other side of the black coat and listens to Jinan by saying he possesses greater martial arts talent than his brother. He holds the door's handle, and then he asks him how long he is planning on rebelling against his grandfather. After hearing his grandfather, he, strongly holding the door handle, looks at him and asks if he knows what his goal is. He separates the door handle from the door, shakes his hand, and says his true nature is kept hidden under the massive veil of being the leader of the Orthodox sect. He angrily says that his goal is to drag that demon out into the light. Scattering the sound of falling down the door handle, Jinan says that it sounds like nothing more than the wails of the weak. By looking outside the window, he says balance cannot be achieved without sacrifices, and if he does not like that, then he needs to have power that combines all things as one. He slightly turns his face, looks at him, and says that he should know he has the power to do that. Jang takes a deep breath arrogantly, opens the door strictly, and goes outside the room without replying to him. On the other side, a lot of people from both buildings run towards Kang with fight equipment to attack him. Kang looks at all of them angrily and says that they are getting too full of themselves today and that he will kill them all alone. Then he moves himself in rotatory motion, jumping and kicking 5 persons at a time. They all fall on the floor hard. Then he looks upwards and sees that some guys jump on him from the building. But Kang moves to a different position and saves them. He notices the sound of someone's wheel on his head, but suddenly Kang jumps aside and that guy's wheel penetrates the floor. Meanwhile, he again feels someone moving towards him, and then some guys fly in the air by rotating and holding hands with each other. One of them hits Kang with his wheel, but he puts his arm on his face. He cannot bear the weight of that wheel and thinks about what kind of attack this is, but a spin attack using the electric wheel as the pivot point. He fell away on the floor, and suddenly, some wheelers jumped on him to hit him. Kang shouts aggressively and says that he does not want to use this technique against kids, but it seems that now he has to. Then, he moves his head downward and starts to spin himself in a circular motion. Those guys attacking him now fell outward by him, and those guys with helmets who also wanted to attack him started looking at him surprisingly. After vanishing the dust, the gangsters are surprised to see that he is not there and suddenly look upward because they feel the bright light coming upside down. There is a grand hand in which a blue magic ball shines and some light clouds form around his hand. That is Kang, who is flying in the air upward. A flashlight comes out of his hand and he tries to fall this light on them. Then he joins his hands perpendicularly and throws this light on them by saying the demonic spirit impact. A bright light in huge amounts expelled out by his hand moves downward and falls on them. That bright light scattered everywhere and whose rays come out of the building. Jiho reaches that building, looks over there, and thinks that maybe something is happening. By running, looking upward, she thinks that she has to run fast and maybe Kang is present there. Then she takes a deep turn to reach there by following the light. When she reaches there, she is surprised to see that a lot of people are lying on the floor unconsciously. They are in bad condition, their clothes are broken, and it seems that someone is persecuting them. Suddenly, she saw to the other side, Kang standing over there in a bow position, tired. After taking a deep breath, he cleaned his face, looked over there, and said that finally she was here. Then Kang smiled, standing there and showing her his arm as his body power. He says to her looks, he showed them how terrifying legitimate institutional power is. Jiho looks here and there surprisingly and thinks against the ancient Moon Squad, which even trained police officers were having trouble with. But he did all this by himself. Then she remembered that the chief had ordered her to keep her eyes on him and submit his activities report to him. Kang is standing in the same position happily, and Jiho still surprisingly looks around. Then she looks at Kang annoyingly and tries to ask him something, but he thinks that she looks at him with love. Kang puts his hand on his face and thinks it seems like she is really interested in him. He looks at him in his suppositions that she is so pretty and looks at her romantically. Meanwhile, Jiho shouts at him and asks what he is thinking. Is he deaf? Then she asks him who he learned martial arts from. Moreover, Jiho puts her finger on his body and says he is a person from the countryside. Dojo surpassed all of the disciples from reputable sects and became the first seat of the Murim police. She again says to him arrogantly that he must have had an amazing master, and he has to tell her the name of him. After hearing this all, Kang replies smilingly that she is thinking wrong. He just uses simple techniques as everyone does. Jiho looks at him angrily and says he also knows these are not simple techniques, but he uses that type of technique and no one knows about them. Suddenly, Jiho shouts, pointing towards the top floor and saying he feels the presence of someone up there, and Jiho turns her face there to see. He quickly jumps and runs towards the roof, saying he will catch that person. He will not get him away, but Jiho calls him, but he does not reply. Jiho thinks that he is a suspicious person and becomes annoyed. Kang reaches the top floor, stands against the wall tiredly, and breathes hard. He puts his hand on his face annoyingly and thinks that his mother tells him there are 3 things he must keep secret while attending school. She advises one to try not to use his grandfather's martial arts and expel bright light from his hand. Second, never take off the demonic spirit earring, and do not ever lose it either. She stands in front of him by putting her hand on her waist and says he knows why she is advising him. Kang puts his arm on his neck and says, okay, then she says the last one is to be careful of pretty women. After listening to the 3rd rule, Kang asks why. but his mother shouts and says he must do as she advises. Meanwhile, Jiho's idea comes into her mind that she is so pretty. He is still standing against the wall, then puts his finger on his lips and thinks that maybe he is not able to maintain the third rule. Suddenly, Kang looks that something is moving towards him, and he moves aside. That thing hits the wall, and some cracks are made in the wall. Kang looks towards it, and this is the yo-yo. Someone comes there waving the powerful laser strings in his hand. He again throws the yo-yo 2 to 3 times toward him, but he runs away, and that attack hits the wall. After being saved by the attacks, Kang sits on the floor and asks who is there, but suddenly, a guy puts a horrible guitar on the floor. There are 3 persons who all belong to the unorthodox Black Alliance. The guy who wears a black shirt and cap is named Oijin. The second one wears a green dress and cap and is named Tang Pal, and the girl is named Lee Hannah. Tang looks at Kang arrogantly and asks him to see his actions. It seems that he has seen many movies. Kang becomes surprised after listening to his compliment. Tang comes in front of him by rotating his guitar. He raises his 2 fingers, a magical ball made on the fingers, and rubs them on the guitar. Horrible and magical sounds spread in the hall, and Kang thinks that maybe this is a magical spell. Suddenly, he sees a red rod coming towards him, and Tang throws the red strings towards him with a magical sound. Kang runs away in a bending position to save himself from those strings, and even then, one string cuts Kang's face. By putting a hand on his face, Kang looks at him and thinks that maybe this is the martial arts that utilizes sounds. Then Ijin attacks Kang's ear with her yo-yo and then moves it back. Meanwhile, Hannah appears there with the magical ring and tries to attack Kang from upward. But Kang suddenly moves aside and her magical ring hits the floor. Then, she rotates herself with the support of the ring and applies a kick to Kang. He fell away and instantly, Hannah threw her ring towards him fast. Kang moves himself downward and a ring penetrates the wall. Hannah jumps upward toward the king, but he rotates himself to the other side and saves them. Ijin appears there with his yo-yo, flying in the air and tying up Kang with the strings of yo-yo. Ijin hits yo-yo on his leg and falls on the floor hard. Meanwhile, Hannah throws her magical ring toward Kang, but the ring nearly touches Kang, and suddenly Jiho comes there. She hits the ring with her sword, and the ring moves away by rotating. Kang is surprised to see that Jiho has come over there. Kang takes a deep breath and thinks that if she does not come, they will kill him today. Jiho asks Kang angrily why he is fighting here by himself, because she will be responsible if anything happens to him. Suddenly, Jiho hears that someone is telling her that she has changed quite a lot. Hannah grabs the magical ring in her hand and says to her that she did not care about anyone before, and now maybe she will change herself. Jiho looks at her angrily and says that, oh, she is here. While rotating the ring in her arm, Hannah taunts that her future is bleak thanks to a certain someone. She looks at Jiho and says, someone who dumped the Black Orthodox organization and entered the Murim Police University. Maybe she will become more mature. Jiho looks at her angrily and says, oh, Lee Hannah, it is she. Hannah comes towards Jiho, tries to attack her with her ring, and says, let's check her skill. She moves the ring near her from upward, but Jiho saves herself with the help of the sword. Jiho looks at her angrily and pushes back her ring strongly. Hannah says her skills have not diminished, and it seems like she is living comfortably while her boyfriend is flirting with her. Hannah jumps upward with her ring and says that Jiho does know what her weakness is. Then she puts a kick to the ring with her foot, looks at her arrogantly, and says her emotions to tie up her weakness. Then the ring moves towards Jiho, rotating, and she stands there holding her sword to hit it. But she sees that the ring moves towards Kang passing near her. The ring fast moves towards Kang, and after seeing this, Jiho becomes angry and says that her trajectory-changing method also has not changed. When the ring near to hit the Kang, Jiho jumps and stops the ring with the help of her sword. Kang becomes frightened to see that ring near his eyes and takes a breath to think that he has been saved. Jiho keeps the ring down her shoe and sits on it. Jiho angrily hears Hannah, who is saying that as she thought, her fundamental flaw has not changed. Hannah offers her. She spoils the magic of her ring, and it is her chance to eliminate her at her most vulnerable state. Hannah looks at her smilingly and says that she will not survive if she has that guy in Murim. Ijin waves his yo-yo and requests Hannah to take a good look at her. That's why he will be able to attack her. Then he throws a lot of yo-yo toward Jiho, and she looks over there actively and strongly, holding her sword to respond. Then she moved forward and hit all the yo-yo moving towards her. Meanwhile, Tang plays the magical guitar, jumps, rotates himself, and plays the guitar in high sound after sitting on the floor. A lot of horrible sound waves move towards them. Kang frightenedly says to her that the idiot uses sound art, but Jiho orders him not to move and to stand there actively. Tang also throws magical strings towards them, but Jiho angrily makes a spell, and her eyes become shiny. The red magical string broke slowly, and she moved aside. Then Jiho blows into that dusty area, and Tang's magical string breaks. Tang smiles and says that it is the very first time that someone has endured his tune. Jiho looks at Tang tiredly, and then Kang looks at her and thinks that their pincer attacks are difficult for Jiho to handle alone. Suddenly, Kang notices their actions because they are all standing there together in front of Jiho. Hannah puts a finger on his face and asks, "Oh dear, did she call her Murim police force friends?" But Iojin says by turning his face that it will be annoying if all those flies start gathering. Then Hannah hits her foot on the ring. The ring rotates, she grabs it in her hand and stands there arrogantly. Tang laughs and says that they will use their private technique to defeat her. Jiho and Kang become surprised, think about their techniques, and look at them angrily. Hannah moves the ring up with her kick, and suddenly Iojin attacks her with his yo-yo. A lot of yo-yo ties up around the ring, and now it's turn to attack Tang. He takes a high jump with his guitar and hits his guitar strongly on the newly prepared ring. Kang shouts frightenedly and says to her that they are preparing some finishing move, and he will be fine, so at least she escapes. But he was surprised to see that Jiho penetrated her sword on the floor. Blue magical rays expelled out from her body, and she told him as his senior she would have to bear the responsibility if anything happened to him. Jiho's hair waving, she says to him that if she cannot dodge it, she will block it. After seeing her, Tang laughs loudly and says that she will not be able to fight this powerful attack. Then Tang grabs the strings of the ring, puts the strings into it, and stretches himself to fall on them. Tang says happily that today he will kill them badly, read a spell on it, ensemble the tune, and throw himself towards them with a bright light with rings. A bright light was scattered in front of Jiho, who was standing there. She slightly closes her eyes because she cannot bear the high-intensity light. A blast occurs in the building, and a lot of sound and stones split out from the top floor of the building. That's why people standing there become frightened to see this. Someone shouts that she is the daughter of the Black Unorthodox Alliance Great Guardian, Yu-Yiho, and someone runs fastly barefooted. A girl with pink hair is crying while running and reaches the door of the room. Some doctors are standing near the dead body in the dark hospital room and looking towards her. This girl Jiho looks over at a dead body and starts crying. She cried a lot to remember the picture of a pink-haired girl putting in the flowers. She sits aside against the wall by holding the picture in her arm because her mother died. While crying, she slightly moves her head upward by hearing her father's voice. His father, Yu-Yiho, comes there with a lady and with 2 employees. Jiho looks surprised to see a lady with her father and thinks that today her mother died and her father committed with another one. Her father tells her arrogantly how she can be so cruel and that she cannot do something like this. By holding her mother's picture, Jiho shouts and tells him that her mother died because of that idiot. She did not do anything. But her father hit her mother's picture. The picture fell away on the floor, and that frame broke. Jiho looks at her arrogantly and taunts her sadly. Jiho watches her mouth, and she is the killer of her mother. Jiho shouts loudly and replies that does not call her name with that dirty mouth of him. While crying and showing her hand, Jiho says that the father she knew died for her today. After some time, she holds her bag and sword and leaves her father's condo, thinking that she left the man she used to call her father. She fought many fights with her father, but today she is going for the test. She grabs the wooden stick, looks at the fighters angrily, and runs towards them to attack them. Then she hits this stick on the face of the guy. The green shirt guy tries to attack her, but she bows her down and saves herself. The green shirt guy again attacks her, but Jiho rotates herself and applies a kick to his face hard and wins. She stands there alone and thinks that she will take revenge on her mother. On the next day, she submitted her information to the Murim Police University. The first leader carefully read her information and wrote marks on the paper. Then he says that he is not sure which sect she is from, but she has excellent skills. The other leader put his hand on his face and asked why she had applied to the Murim Police University, but she stood quietly there. Then she holds her mother's pendant and thinks that she has to take revenge. By holding her mother's pendant, she tells them angrily that she comes here to take revenge. The second leader shouts at her and says she should know the ethos of this university. The first leader tells her in this university, they train the mind and body through martial arts and contribute to society by correcting any chaos. Moreover, he looks at her and says don't even think about setting foot into the Murim Police University with personal feelings such as revenge. She lifts up her luggage sadly, says to them sorry, and tells them she did not know about it. She turns slightly and says that if the Murim Police University is such a boring place, then anyone can win this test. A leader shouts at her by saying she is so rude and will not be able to be admitted to this university. But Jinin looks at her suspiciously. Then she moves outside the building. When she was walking, someone appeared there behind her. She suddenly turns back because she feels something unusual, but no one behind her and thinks that is definitely killing intent. Seeing her backside, she hears that someone on her other side tells her to talk with her. Meanwhile, she attacks them with her magical sword, but no one is there. Suddenly, Jinin appears behind her and says that the ability to respond to even the slightest amount of Kai energy quickly is rare to see such sharp senses nowadays. Jinin looks at her and asks if she inherited it from your father, but maybe she harder her senses through hard work. Jinin looks at her with his red eyes and says he knows she is the daughter of Yu Yiho. Jiho turns back to look at him and says maybe he wants her something. Jinin downward says that this university does not discriminate against one's origins, and it is a place that assesses only skills. Jiho carefully listens to him. He tells her, however, that what is important is how she uses those skills, even if it is used for murder. Jinin tells her he will assist her in her revenge, but in exchange, he will need her in the future. Jiho replies no thanks by closing her eyes and tells him arrogantly that she does not need to follow in the footsteps of a criminal like her father. Jinin quietly looks at her behavior in the hall and then closes his eyes to think of something. Then he turns on the other side by saying he cannot let go of such a talented individual, so she passes. He slightly turns towards her and says smilingly that she owes him one now, and he disappears from there. She, standing there, looks at Jinin surprisingly and thinks that her revenge journey starts from here. Then be a part of this university. She received invisible glares from her colleagues because of rumors that she was from an unorthodox sect. No one wants to talk with her. She is standing alone and has no friends. Rather, she decided that she would not be second to anyone in terms of skills because she had to be alone from the start. That was all how she had lived up until now. Then, one day, she met a guy. She felt something different when he held her hand. Then, to go outside with him, she felt that she could not work with a guy. Those were all the previous moments she was thinking about. Suddenly, Kang asks her if she is all right and looks at her suspiciously. Jiho surprisingly looks at him and thinks that all she thinks is her past. She sees that Kang is sitting in front of her and saves her with a knife. Kang says to her, he feels a good relief and then falls on the floor. Jiho annoyingly moves forward to see his condition, but he becomes unconscious. On Mooney night, in the Murim Police Force exclusive hospital, a doctor checks the reports and says that what a miracle because fewer people survive after such injuries. After hearing Kang's condition, Jaijok annoyingly put his hand on his chest and said thank God he is fine now. Kang is lying on the hospital bed unconsciously, and the doctor informs the condition of Jiho and Jaijok. While looking towards Kang, doctors tell them he will open his eyes soon once he gets some sleep. Moreover, he did not lose consciousness because he received external injuries, but simply because he had used up all his Kai. Jiho looks at him suspiciously and thinks that he is completely unharmed after getting hit by such an attack. The doctor asks Jiho smilingly, could it be that Mr. Kang has something special that others do not, but she does not reply. By fixing his glasses, the doctor tells her that, after all, unpredictable things happen in life all the time. After going to the doctor, Jiho puts her head on the bed on the foot side of Kang. She looks towards the bed and thinks she definitely heard that Hannah was excommunicated from Dad's organization. Jiho does not understand that she is with the people of the ancient Moon Squad. She looks towards him annoyingly and tells him to get well soon. She sees that Kang is sleeping calmly by opening her mouth. She puts her hand down her face and thinks why this idiot saved her because she is near to killing. She remembers the previous moment when Kang told her she was all right, and then he fell on the floor unconsciously. She thinks that he is so suspicious because he has no wounds, but he fights all of them alone. After the fight, Jiho thinks that Tang smiles and tells her to think he took on their ensemble techniques head-on with just a knife. Eugene asks them, surprisingly, if he got out of his yo-yo restraint, but suspiciously looks at him. After fighting, those three guys stand annoyingly and look at them. By fixing his hat, Tang says that he has left quite an impression on his kid, and Eugene says, let's get out of here, but Hannah says that they can end it here. How it is. Jiho angrily runs towards Hannah with her sword and says she will kill her today and stop right there. But suddenly, dusty clouds scattered around them. Meanwhile, Hannah says there is no need to rush since they will see each other again even if they don't want to. Hannah puts her 2 fingers on her lips and smilingly says to her she will see her then. Jiho thinks about the previous moments, puts their hand down their chin and says that she will have to confirm it. Suddenly, Jaijok comes there holding medicine and